Welcome to the Next Steps to Leadership with your host, Dr. Stephen Oliver. In each episode, we invite experts to share their passion and their leadership journey to help you in your next steps. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, hrcvision.com. Now, here's the host of Next Steps to Leadership, Dr. Stephen Oliver.
Well, hello, and welcome to my podcast. I'm Dr. Stephen Oliver, or known as Dr. O. So thank you for joining my podcast, Taking the Next Steps in Leadership. The purpose of this podcast is to give some tips and techniques to younger and newer managers on how they can navigate their career and take that next step in their career and life journey. This podcast is also for other folks too, because all different ages and different generations are taking a next step in life. So everyone is welcome to join. I invite senior leaders, academic professors, business owners, human resource managers, learning leaders, and nurse leaders to come to my podcast to give a little bit about their story, give some tips and techniques, and talk about some things that they did well to get where they are today, and then maybe some things that they learned along the way. So it's really great to have this array of guests to come in. So with that in mind, I have another guest today. Very, very excited about my guest. This is Dr. Adam Payne. And Adam is an assistant professor of humanities and social sciences in the School of Sciences and Humanities at Wentworth Institute of Technology in the Boston area. Dr. Payne earned his doctorate of education from the University of Pennsylvania. There's a doctoral program in the Graduate School of Education called the Chief Learning Officer. It combines adult learning and the business of learning for those professionals who are in some of those areas. It also has a lot of classes and professors from the Wharton School of Business who come in and lecture. Great program. I'm a graduate myself. Dr. Payne finished in 2018, and his dissertation investigated the initial formation of bands of general business musicians. We have a whole nother podcast with you, Dr. Payne. Dr. Payne also has a Master's of Arts in Industrial Organizational Psychology from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology and Statistics at the University of Central Florida. And he's a big fan. Go Knights. While working in an internal OD consulting it's a large healthcare firm. He worked there in North Carolina for a while. Dr. Payne made a decision to switch his careers after the loss of both his parents to cancer. And he began his career in higher education and as administrator, program director, and has taught as a part-time adjunct professor at many institutions in the Boston area. So as just said, Dr. Payne is also a musician, regularly performing solo with his original band, and he's recorded 6 albums. Wow. Again, there's a second podcast coming. And he contributes to other albums and projects. So, in addition to this other part of his career, he does the musical. He does many more things, but one thing that's significant is Dr. Payne he serves as the president and chair of this University of Pennsylvania Chief Learning Officer Alumni Network. There's a lot of us, and he's on the board of directors and serves as end-of-life doula for hospice. So welcome, Dr. Payne. How are you? How are you doing today? Welcome.
Doing great. Thank you, Dr. O. Appreciate you having me. Things are going well. Yeah, just overall trying to enjoy life, trying to, make sure I show up for my commitments. And lately I've been attending leadership conferences this year. So
Okay.
I've been enjoying doing that. So.
Well, it's great. I saw you recently at a reunion for the Penn CLO, and it was nice. Great program, great networking, leadership, and then just some fun. So, do you mind, Adam, telling us just a little bit about some other things that you're up to today? What are you up to in addition to your teaching?
Sure. Yeah, I think that, the teaching and, a lot of what goes with that as a full-time professor is really the priority right now. But taking time to be available and do make sure things in my personal life are going well, right? Just trying to balance that. Work-life balance is going pretty well. Um, and I do still, as a musician, I play a lot more than I used to, just on my own. But I do still gig here and there, a little bit. So those are the main things. Yeah, like I said, just trying to enjoy life and just make it through okay in this
All
world.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think many of us are trying to do that. So it's
Yep.
nice to have these other talents. So our topic today is going to be life management framework, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into that, I wanted to see if you could tell us just a little bit about Wentworth Institute of Technology, and what do you do for them? Who are the students? And
Mhm.
STEM programs are very important. So tell us a little
So,
bit about Wentworth.
sure. Yeah, it's an undergraduate and graduate institution in the heart of Boston, and it is a specialized institution, as you mentioned. Students primarily come there, to major in a STEM-related major. So that could be, engineering, architecture, design, um, construction management is a really big and well, like, kind of nationally recognized program as well. And also the School of Data and Computing Sciences, a lot of really strong majors there. And my school is, as you mentioned, is the School of Sciences and Humanities, and we primarily do a lot of the general education, but also we offer a lot of electives as well. So students have a good array of things that they can be a part of, and it's a real pleasure. My role at Wentworth is I'm the only full-time psychology person.
Okay.
So I try to leverage my focus on applied psychology to the courses that I teach, which is industrial organizational psychology, and then I also teach a class called the Psychology of Leadership, which I created
Mhm.
in 2020, right before the pandemic. So.
Great, fantastic, and
Yeah.
especially at that college age, it's so important. Adam, who are some of your students? Where do they come from? Um, what are they about?
Sure.
And
Yeah, I
then-
think they're. I would describe them. I mean, what's great is they come from all over. A lot come from the northeastern area, but there are many international students. Students who come from California, all around the nation. But I would describe them as extremely intelligent, really curious, very reflective and driven. I would say it's such an honor to work with students who, I think, at this point have a general idea of what it is, the direction that they want to head in. And to be able to support them with the classes that I teach is like a tremendous honor. And another big focus that they have at the school, they have the opportunity to participate in co-ops or internships, usually one or two or more. And that really gives them kind of a ready for work mentality and mindset that really works well for the classes that I teach, and the discussions that we have. And I think they're able to be that much more of a resource to each other by being able to speak about some of the early work experience that they have and the ability to apply what they're learning in a work setting. So it's a real pleasure to work with the students.
Well, that's fantastic. And at that age, it's really tough to decide what you want to do in your career and in your life. I think even a lot further, 20 years above, it's hard. People,
Yep.
there's a lot of choices, but yet, the cost of schooling is huge, and things are changing, technology. So it's tough, and we're going to get into that. So you set that up great. I wanted to discuss the life management framework and the connection to the psychology of leadership. And if you're okay, you shared with me a paper you wrote a couple of years ago, which is fantastic. And this kind of, to me, I see this as a framework of what you're doing. And so I wanted to read the title of your paper and a couple of questions you asked in the abstract, which I thought was fantastic. So your title is Be Up in the Classroom. That's great. So Be Up, that's very positive. Application of a life management framework into the undergraduate leadership course. And some of the questions that you asked and then you wrote about in your paper were, so 3 questions here. How can life management framework be utilized in an undergraduate leadership course? What, if any, relevance does life management framework have for undergraduate students? And then your last question was, what if any relevance does a life management framework have for leadership education? So I wanted to know if you could just start out and tell us a little bit about your idea of that paper and those questions. I think they were really wonderful.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, the idea of Be Up was something that started with me many years ago on, I guess the platform was called X now. It was called Twitter back in the day.
Right.
And I just started using the hashtag Be Up as a way to try to, be positive, to spread, some kind of positivity with whatever post that I was involved in posting on social media. And then from there, I had the opportunity to give a TED Talk in 2016, where I was able to do a little bit more research behind the idea. And that's when I really discovered life management, and that there's a whole area of, tools and strategies that people can utilize to manage their life, hopefully more effectively. So I was able to, again, do some research for that presentation, which led to the framework, the Be Up framework, which I make use of in the class as well. So, the framework, I think, is a really good tool in the class that I teach. Psychology of Leadership is the class where I use that. I'm able to incorporate some life management components because the focus of the leadership class is really self-development, ways to, kind of the prequel to before you're leading people toward a common goal. Who are you? What's important to you? What drives you? What's going on inside of you? And how does that, how can that make you, kind of form a practice of effective leadership that works for who you are? So the Be Up framework works really well and works nicely in that, in a class like that, because it's another tool both for leadership educators and for students to really reflect on who they are, reflect on things that might be challenging, and to think about ways of trying to deal with that through the use of a lot of goal setting and the systems that would go along with the goals that are set.
I think that's fantastic. But I guess one of my first question is how do you get the students to really think about their lives, their careers ahead of them, and as you said, what's important to them? How do you get them to really think about that? Because again, at that age, it's tough with so many options and choices.
It's true. Yeah, and I think too, at a specialized institution, it adds another significant challenge of, these students are very, very busy in their major, learning technical skills. So even more so, kind of, it's more difficult to dig into that. But I see that as a really healthy challenge in the classes that I teach, to work with students, get them to think about I'd say my main goal in any course that I teach is to encourage people to think, for themselves, but also to apply, what they're learning, what they can kind of learn about human behavior, which is really the focus of the classes I teach, to their personal and professional leadership journey. And I think giving students that frame, it immediately becomes a, more future focused idea. Who do you want to be? What steps do you want to take now to kind of, be your best self in the future? So I think it works really well to talk about things that highlight, aspects of the life management research that are able to help them think about making those steps now, so that they, once they graduate or whenever they get to that next step in their life, they can feel like they've done some of the work that will help them to be successful.
And how might you get them to actually choose some goals or lay out goals, or
Absolutely.
some steps. How do you do that? Because that's, I think, really important.
Yeah, so I think, again, because the students are very busy and because their majors and the projects that come in their majors are very involved, I've tried to make the material that I teach really accessible, and not a heavy lift, but something that will stay with them, hopefully for a long time after taking the classes. And I think I really rely a lot on just reflective questions, kind of with that same frame, introducing material, right? In the leadership class, I cover a lot of the traditional approaches to leadership that we've heard about for years and years. But I think the main important piece is, and I preface this, is it's not what I say about it. It's not, I'm not the authority on leadership. I have my own life and the ways that it works for me. But I think really getting students to kind of take the examples that I set and then kind of erase that and fill in their own examples, their own application. And I feel like with material like this, that's probably the most tried and true method, is to really apply it to your situation, think about how it applies, think about how you can use it with where things are now and in the future. And it seems like students so far have been really responsive to that approach.
And I'm just wondering if you help them kind of narrow things down. At one of the colleges I teach at, I supervise senior thesis, and they come out of the gate wanting, to write 10 things, a massive book. And I'm like, down, this is just a short paper.
Yeah.
And so tomorrow night I'm meeting with one of my students, and I think I've got her down, but it's about, paring things down and not trying to take on every single topic. And I'm wondering if you do a little bit of that in their career management, not try to be 10 different careers.
Yeah, no, I think that is important. What comes up a lot, it might come up later in our conversation, is, the idea of making career pivots. And I think being a STEM major at a specialized institution, having the flexibility of trying to a willingness to be adaptable can be tough, because it's very much a conveyor belt, right? You learn this, you have a co-op or two, and then you get a full-time entry-level job, and then you kind of go from there. But people's interests change. People's life can significantly alter what you might have originally thought. So, I think one of the things that I do in the class is I really try to focus on not just goal setting, but goal setting that can be really much more effective with the inclusion of systems to go along with the goals. It's really only the last several years that I've found I think the traction that setting systems along with the goals can help out with. So in the class, as a way to demonstrate, the leadership framework and some of the other pieces that we talk about, there's a project called the Aspire project that I have students work on. And it's basically a fancy way to give them an opportunity to set a goal for something, typically maybe not related to what it is that they're doing in their major, maybe not related to academics. Let's say if they wanted to learn to play the saxophone or the guitar, or if they wanted to, get ready for an upcoming 5K race or something like that. This is a really good opportunity for them to set goals, to experience what it's like to really be intentional about setting the systems of how many times a day you're going to work on this, for how long, to be able to kind of see success in setting a goal. And I think we talk about that because it is a semester-long project. We're able to check in about it. They're able to share with each other some of the challenges of motivation, of kind of keeping the consistency to achieve the goal. And I think ideas like that really help students as they think about future goals, to kind of calibrate them so that they can work the best, right? I think making sure that the specificity of systems helps them to achieve their goals is something that I really hope that students are able to take with them after taking the class.
And how do you help them with any setbacks or roadblocks that can get in the way? Because I imagine, using your systems, they're, moving forward towards something, but what if there's a roadblock or a setback?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for the Be Up section, because it is a a class, we spend at least one class on Be Up. There's a set of reflective questions that basically help students to think through, how are you dealing with things? What's the current state of your life? And I try to ask them to identify some setbacks and advancements, right? So things that could be roadblocks, as you mentioned, but also things that are going well, and to really get them to focus on both of those and trying to leverage both of those, both kind of improving upon the setbacks, or trying to deal with them, trying to improve them, while capitalizing on advancements, to again, to be future focused, to set goals, and to put their best foot forward. And students really, it seems like students get a lot out of really examining their life. I think a lot of students are at that age that many of us were at, where a lot of people's expectations are kind of driving and informing what it is that they do. So students really seem to write reflectively, and I think their writing really speaks to the idea of it seems like it's a good opportunity for them to think more about what they want to do, to think through how they can deal with their setbacks and advancements, and think from their standpoint of ways that they can kind of be in the driver's seat to manage their lives effectively.
And I'm sure you've noticed this, but I noticed this especially during COVID and a little post-COVID. So many things going on in people's lives, and you'll get emails and calls and comments from students about things that are happening at home and at work, and people getting sick, and just a lot of changes. And it can be frustrating, and it can be challenging to just really pump them up. You mentioned, Adam, expectations. There are so many parents that want you to be XYZ. Be a judge, be a lawyer, be a doctor.
Yep.
And this may not, connect with people, or even be in the family business. I think that's one of the biggest ones, whatever the family business is. Any things that you do to help them with these heavy duty expectations?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really try to be very responsive in the way that I teach, so that if there are students who see themselves as wanting to take over family business, I try to accommodate that and speak to it. So I think no matter where the students are, I try to meet them where they are and where they see themselves, going in the near future, and I try to really be responsive to that. A lot of check-ins and feedback throughout the semester. But I would say, really in any class that I teach, giving them opportunities to reflect deeply on what's important to them, I think is a way to help them level set. Yes, these other people want me to do these things, but what do I want for myself, right? What do I see as, something that's going to make me excited about my future, and how can I tie that into, again, what's important to me? And then again, taking what's important and then trying to set realistic goals that align with what's important to them, I think helps them, establish a little bit of momentum of, this is what's important to me, and here I am taking the steps to accomplish that, while also, managing and balancing the expectations of others, because a lot of those are good, right? The best intentions there, but making sure that that it's that what they see as most beneficial to them, and most important to them, that's in the driver's seat, I think is really important.
And I really like what you said about checking in, and that adds to your job and our jobs, checking in. But that's part of it. And it's not just parents, it's also family, teachers, community leaders. There's a lot of people who have expectations, and that balance was really important that you mentioned. How do you balance working with them, but then doing your own pathway? This is a really tough one that we talked about. What about that one or two students that they just have no idea? They just have no direction. And even though you're giving your models and your frameworks, how do you work with them? Because I imagine they're challenging too.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I think it's a challenge, but it's also, it's an opportunity to encourage open-mindedness. It's an opportunity to encourage, thinking, being adaptive. So I think it's, for students, with no idea, right? I think those are things that I try to emphasize. Really, pay attention to the things that even might seem like they're not in your wheelhouse of possibilities, and you never know, where things can take you. Seeking out opportunities of interest. I think for students who maybe identify as having less of an idea of what their future looks like. Again, just getting them in the mindset of establishing that momentum. What's interesting to them, seek it out. It could be a hobby. It might turn into a full-time career. But being open, I think, makes a really big difference. And then also, no matter what, I think just really emphasizing, something that we talked about in our doctoral program is, making sure that you're building a network, whether you know what you want to do or not, just building people that you can check in with, that you can establish trust and a rapport with, to maybe, have one-off conversations, or hopefully have, more meaningful conversations, and those people can be a real asset. So kind of seeking the feedback, seeking people who can, you can trust, to help you make some of those tougher decisions about what's next, or forming an idea for what comes next. I think has been a good method to take.
Well, good suggestions, and it sounds like you invest a lot of time in them. I'll give a little plug here. One of my other more recent podcasts with Dr. Mary McNevin, she talked about networking and the importance and how critical it is for your career and to keep doing it. And she's got a great framework on how to, know who's in your career and how to add people. So that's up and coming, folks. So thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that. I wonder if we could show the Be Up framework model.
Sure.
That is, and then just tell a little bit about that.
Sure. So this first slide is the framework that I use for the class overall, and the Be Up framework fits in this. It's a section of the class. So you can see the very long title, the Action-Based Effective Leadership Development and Influence Framework. And it emphasizes taking action, demonstrating potential for self and others. And like many leadership educators, we love Donald McGannon's quote of, leadership begins with action, leadership is action, not position. So really putting an emphasis on the fact that we can all have the opportunity to lead no matter what our title or position is. Actions beget a demonstration of potential, and then both taking action and demonstrating potential have a self and others dimension, and that kind of informs the framework. So if we could go to the next slide, that will focus on, this is the Be Up framework. So, and this was based on a survey that I sent out for the TED Talk from 2016. Identified 3 thematic areas of digestion, balance, and momentum. So digestion has to do with, it's really kind of like a central processing, right? Like, am I dealing with things? How am I dealing with things? What's my process for dealing with things? Can I make improvements? And how can I, once I identify setbacks and advancements, how can I kind of put this through my process to keep what is good for me, and then to kind of eschew or get rid of the things that aren't great, or that aren't really worth holding on to in life. Then we have the area of balance, which really focuses on integrity. And my definition of integrity is really, what's important to you, and how you behave, and kind of the alignment between those things. So if your values and your behavior are in alignment, that's probably a good indication that there's some balance in your life. If there are things where you're acting certain ways that are not maybe in line with what you value, then it could be an opportunity to try to work on achieving balance in that way. And then the last area of momentum really focuses on, the things that help us to keep going, the things that excite us, our goals, our values, but also the people in our lives, whether it's, family or friends or whatever it might be. And then, things that will help us kind of continue on and establish and maintain purpose in our life. So, so all 3 of those areas, seem like they are helping, students and other folks to be able to have, at least some inroads to kind of managing their life effectively. And not every piece of the framework, applies to everyone. It doesn't resonate with everybody, but I think even a small thinking about these, or even just one of them, I think can help somebody, particularly to kind of deal with the setbacks in their lives. Yeah. So so that's the Be Up framework.
This is great. And one thing you said about balance is, being in alignment with your values and then those things around you. And that can be really tough with you're in a organization that may not have those things that are in alignment with your values. Can be a struggle.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think, whatever the environment, I think just being able to check in with yourself, it's something that you can do as much as you feel necessary. And then if you have people that you can trust, right, you can establish, maybe they can check in, how's your balance, right? Like how's your values and behavior alignment, how is that going? It can be a conversation starter, and then it can be, the impetus for if somebody has feedback, or if there's a way that somebody else can assist with the person, it gives them a kind of a frame to do that, to start down.
This is really, really a nice model, good framework, and it can be a challenge doing all three. You're right. So I wanted to just take a little side turn to you, Adam, because this is really, I believe, important to what we're talking about today. So you've said a couple times you're a musician, you have albums, you do solo things, you're with a band, you record. Tell us a little bit about your passion for music and how you got into that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think music has been a big part of my life. Since a very early age, right? In school, being in the choir and the chorus, and being a classically trained, vocalist, I think really helped me see a path for music in my life, and learned to play a lot of instruments in high school, and kind of carried that forward in college. And I've been, recording and, doing gigs and all that for well over 20 years now. If you want to bring up the last slide in the slideshow there, that's a preview of the albums that I have. So yeah, six albums and some singles as well. But yeah, I think I really enjoy music. It's been really great, since I switched over to higher education, many years ago. It's done a really great job of kind of helping me, create some or achieve some kind of work-life balance. And it's good to have, a passion that I think in a lot of ways runs more parallel to the work that I do and the classes that I teach, the topics that I talk about. And I've been willing to see, more so in later years, I see the connection. But I think it gives me an opportunity to work, to have a body of work aside from, publications and other things that a professor would have, but to be able to pursue my passions. And I think it gives a little bit more weight to, my interest and encouragement of students to be able to, encourage and explore what it is that's important to them. It at least is an example of, somebody trying to help you do that who has also kind of done that. So.
And you kind of answered my next question in your last statement. Why is it so important to have other passions, even if you have a primary career or primary direction? Well, what's the benefit of these additional passions in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when we think about work-life balance, I think it's good to have another passion. When we think of, a research area that one of our colleagues, Dr. Candy Weens, focuses on, right? Burnout in organizations. We can work forever, right? We can work nonstop. We can become easily become workaholics. In the other hospice work that I do, I've learned a lot about the end of life experience. Nobody talks about their career. Nobody thinks about the sale that they got, or the vice president position. People think about, what's important in their life. And I think that having another passion other than, what drives you in terms of your career can really help you, with that work-life balance piece, which prioritizing what's going to be most important, most likely as we get towards the end of life. But then I think also helping you to see the relatedness of how something that might seem disparate from your career can actually inform and actually, enrich what it is that you're doing. So for me, music is very human focused, very relationship focused, being able to read a crowd, being able to pick up on the nuances that happen while you're trying to present information or sing, present a song, has been really beneficial and transferable in being, a teacher in a classroom, and having to read crowds, having to understand things, the kind of the classroom management pieces. So I think, for me, it's easy, the human component. I teach about human behavior, but I think even things, like I said before, that could seem unrelated, it's very interesting to see and to hear from other people that they have found some of those parallels between what they're passionate about and what they do for the career, which they also were probably passionate about as well.
Well, and I imagine you put that in your life management what might be those passions in addition to the goals you have.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important. Adam, anything else about you that you can share with us that can connect to this life management framework?
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot. It is an area that I do hope to continue to do research in. I mean, I have written a few papers and presented at a few conferences, but definitely long term, I'd like to, really focus on doing more work and talking with more people about how they manage their lives effectively, and come up with more tips and strategies that can be helpful for people. So, and this has been a great platform to talk about it. I really appreciate it.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Dr. Adam Payne, Assistant Professor of Humanities, Social Sciences in the School of Sciences and Humanities at Wentworth Institute of Technology, laying a life management framework be up for students, balance, momentum, digestion, and just really helping folks to think about that. I wish this was around in my day. But thank you so much for coming today. Very informative. Really appreciate it, Adam.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Great. Well, and I wanted to thank all of our audience today for coming to my podcast, Taking the Next Step in Leadership. Hopefully, some of these points that Dr. Adam Payne suggested will help you in your career. So please stay connected with us, Stephen Oliver, Dr. Dr. O at HRC Vision Leadership Consulting, and Dr. Adam Payne. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.
You've been tuning in to Next Steps to Leadership with your host, Dr. Stephen Oliver. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, hrcvision.com. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.